So you can feel the plot start to thicken here, right? Here's Peter, here's Jesus. They haven't been, really in any direct contact until now. And Jesus is there cooking breakfast around a fire exactly the same. How many times has Peter wept over the last time he was at a fire like this? And here he is talking to Jesus again. And Jesus looks at Peter, and what does he say? You may have read this before. He turns to Peter and he says, Peter, do you love me? Now let that sink in, okay? It's kind of a bizarre question if you think about it. Peter, do you love me? Or really, that's what I want to know. It could have asked, Peter, did you learn your lesson? Or how could you do this to me? Or didn't I tell you so? You would figure Jesus would pull the I told you so card, right, at some point. Peter, can I trust you again? Peter, how could you lead my church? What makes you think that's possible? Peter, you should be ashamed of yourself. Jesus could have said all of those things, but he only asked, Peter, do you love me? And Peter says, yes, of course I love you. And Jesus says, feed my sheep. A second time, he says the very same thing. Peter, do you love me? And Peter says, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Then the third time, he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? This time it says Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me? And he said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. And Jesus said, feed my sheep. Now think about that question for a minute, will you? Okay? Because it's not a question, it's a statement. Because isn't it true that I don't really care whether you love me or not unless I love you, right? I mean, I didn't write any notes to girls in junior high that said, check this box if you like me, unless I liked them already. That's how it works. In all my life, I've never asked anybody if they loved me if I didn't care that they loved me because I loved them already. This is not a question, this is a statement. Jesus is saying to Peter, you know what? I love you. Do you love me? Let's just get this out of the way right here. And he asks him once, and Peter says yes. And he asks him twice, and Peter says yes. And he asks him the third time, and Peter's like, hey, I already said it. And then at some point around that memory trigger fire, I think it kind of dawned on Peter, as it does for all of us, why Jesus had to do it 3 times. How many times had Peter denied Jesus? 3 times. So Jesus says, I want to fully reinstate you. Tell me 3 times that you love me, because you're never going to not need grace. Jesus is saying, even though you messed up, I'm choosing you to lead my organization after I'm gone. What's interesting about this is if you go back and look at the prayer that Jesus prayed before the crucifixion, this was it. I have pleaded in prayer for you, Simon, that your faith should not fail. So when you have repented and turned to me again, in other words, I know you're going to blow it, so when you have blown it and you come back to me again, strengthen and build up your brothers. I mean, even before all this happens, Jesus is saying, look, I really want you to take any failure that happens, and I know there's going to be public failure and people are going to be disappointed with you. I want you to take that and I want you to turn it around and make it into motivation. I want you to go feed my sheep. 3 times he says it so that Peter gets it. I want you to lead. I want you to feed my sheep. You are my guy.